recently learned that the Education Minister ordered all Alberta school districts and education organizations to reduce costs. This goes directly against the government's repeated commitment to not reduce funding for programs Albertans value most. This is the second time this week we're learning about big cuts to critical programs from the media rather than from the government. To the Premier, how many other critical programs and services have been targeted for cuts?
Good question.
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And just to revisit what's happened over the last number of years, we've been very focused on making sure that we stop the deep cuts that were coming forward from the now official opposition. We made sure that we funded enrollment growth, and we made sure that those funds went towards school districts. We also worked to make sure that we reduced school fees in this province, and all of those things certainly wouldn't have happened under the opposition's watch. Now, Mr. Speaker, in terms of local decision-making, we respect the fact that we get the funds as close to the communities as possible, and we trust local decision-makers to do the best with those funds to meet the community's needs.
For supplemental.
Mr. Speaker, school districts have been told to cut several items that help our education professionals become better at serving Alberta students. Conferences, travel, and professional membership fees are on the block. These opportunities allow our teachers and administrators to share and learn best practices with education professionals around the world. To the Premier, what is the dollar amount that the government expects to save by cutting Alberta's education professionals off at the knees in their ability to become better educators in the future?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know the member opposite is working at hyperbole, but that's exactly what that is, Mr. Speaker. We've worked hard to make sure that we're getting funds into the classrooms. We're getting funds through the agreement that we had with the Alberta Teachers Association Classroom Improvement Funds. When I've gone to schools and asked, how are you investing some of those funds, they've talked about very specific conferences they've taken around literacy or numeracy or other items that are of particular interest to the students in their class. When I, of course, have met with school boards, some of them talk about the focus that they've really done around making sure that they have reasonable class sizes, Mr. Speaker. These are all things that are only possible because this government brought in a budget that supports Alberta families and makes their lives better.
Thank you. Second supplemental.
Mr. Speaker, it's unfair and lacking compassion to present our educators with a lump of coal by demanding these cuts right before Christmas. There are definitely savings to be found by collaborating with educators rather than issuing a Grinchy edict. To the Premier, how does the government hope to achieve compassionate cuts by surprising our educators with this last-minute rush to address costs?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think that everyone knows that this government is deeply committed to ensuring that we have a very strong education system in this province, and we've shown that through all of our budgets. We've also shown all Albertans that we expect that now that we're out of the economic downturn and we're on a path of moving up, Mr. Speaker, we want to do so while, of course, ensuring that we have thoughtful ways of addressing what might be some excess, and that's why those letters were sent to school boards rather than dictates that said what they had to do. We want to work with them to make sure we find efficiencies and make Alberta's classrooms even better, Mr. Speaker.